Hello and a very good evening from Goa. This is Rishad De Cruz, and today, boy, do I have an exciting episode for you. So first of all, let me say that I am back in Goa, back home in the village of Aldona. Now, Aldona is called the Writers' Village, and the reason it's called the Writers' Village is because we have a lot of esteemed, prolific authors who have actually come from this village. So you have artists, you have musicians. My mother was a pianist, and we come from the village which is adjacent to Aldona called Moira. That's the local bread man. So what they do is whenever they come past the house, they blow that horn, and it sort of signals their arrival, and people go out and buy the bread. It's called poi in Goa. It's hot fresh bread, and then they have it with their dinner. Okay, so guys, this is a very exciting episode, and I'll tell you why. Because over the last 15 years, I've been living between the UK and Goa. So I have perspective of both places. Does it make sense to buy properties in Goa for British investors? When I say British, I mean British Indians, right? People who have OCI cards. On the flip side, does it make sense for us Indians to buy and invest in the UK? So the last month I spent in London. It was quarantine, it was lockdown, it was the epicenter of chaos. There's a saying that when Britain sneezes, the world catches a cold, and that couldn't be more true, particularly in this COVID scenario. Fortunately, Britain has come up with the vaccine, but when I went there, the whole of England was in lockdown. The British government, the NHS, divided England into 4 tiers, tier 4 being the most stringent and most strict. There was, however, a window period just before Christmas where the government relaxed the rules and put London into tier 2, which meant that you could step out, you could do a bit of shopping, and I used that opportunity to walk around London, have a look at the estate agents, check out the prices, and get a glimpse into the eye of the volcano. Because I personally believe that once the situation, the COVID situation, the economic situation in London gets handled or subsides, the rest of the world will follow suit. So let's just jump right in, get down to brass tacks. What are the pros and cons of investing in London? Let's start with the cons. The biggest con of investing in the UK, not just London, is something called the inheritance tax. Now, what is the inheritance tax? The inheritance tax, as the name suggests, is a tax that the government levies upon an individual when he inherits a property. So, for example, you work for the next 10 or 15 years, you buy a property in London that costs 10 crores or £1 million. If you want to give that property to your son or your daughter, they will have to pay the government a percentage, and it works out to roughly about 30 to 40% of the value of that to the British government, even though you have paid for it entirely during your lifetime. And that for me absolutely doesn't make sense. Okay, so what are the pros of investing in England or in London? To begin with, you have an extraordinary quality of life. So it's clean, it's systematic, it's extremely safe. So contrary to what they tell you or what you see on the media, London is really safe. You can be who you want, you can dress the way you like. Extremely diverse cultural background, so people from all over the world, you get a chance to change your perception, you get a chance to try different cuisines, meet different people. The infrastructure is iconic. You know, you have the tube, you have buses, you have Uber, everything works. You can plan your day to the minute. The police are reliable, you can ask people for direction. There's virtually no corruption. So for example, you want to start a business, you can start it very quickly. There's no 100 windows, there's about 1 or 2 windows to start a business in London. So now, what are the pros and cons of investing in Goa? Now this is particularly for those Indians, non-resident Indians who live in England. The biggest pro is that your children will inherit the properties that you have. What are the cons? The cons are the taxes and the entry and the exit. Entry and exit. When I say entry and exit, I mean entering into the transaction. So it's going to cost you 10%. Let's say you buy something of 5 crores, 500,000 pounds, it's going to cost you 50,000 pounds just to enter, stamp duty, registration, legal fees, etc., etc. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg to exit. So that means that the government charges you a tax to exit. So how do I put this? So let's say it's in a similar kind of transaction, £500,000, you pay that entry, but when you're selling it, there's something called TDS, so it's tax deducted at source, where you end up paying almost 20% of the value. So your 500,000, 20% is deducted on whatever your sale amount is. So let's say it appreciated to 1 million. You pay 20% on that 1 million. It's ridiculous. And then if you want to juggle around, you need to get a clever CA, and he needs to get at your tax back, etc., etc., etc. So you understand that the taxation system in India is highly complex, and it can ruin your sense of goodwill. So to sum it up, does it make sense to buy, and in what scenarios does it make sense? I'll tell you. If you are living in England and you want to buy in Goa as an investment, you need to have more than $1 million. And that million, which is about 10 crores, you need to diversify it in land, in under construction projects, right? And we can help you do that. The second way it makes sense is if you are doing it as a retirement home. You want the good weather, you have friends, etc. It's more of an emotional decision. Then it makes sense. You know, you have a second home, you have a base. It doesn't really make a difference if it appreciates too much or not. But I always say that money should be put mainly into land or residential, one single residential house, not too many gated communities, not 1,000 apartments. You know, in this way, you know that it will appreciate because it's one of a kind. These are the projects that you should put your money into, these two areas. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. You may as well put it in mutual funds, etc., and get your fixed return, and you get your money out very quickly. Okay, so I hope that makes sense for those of you who want to invest in Goa. Thank you for watching, and again from Goa, hope you have a very good evening and good night.